She thought a few carefully veiled words would be enough to push a black man out of first class. Until he calmly pulled an FBI badge from his pocket. That was Fort Worth International Airport. A sunny morning, noisy but far from unfamiliar to Patricia Langford. Striding through security with a confidence built from a decade of flying first class, she barely glanced around. Everything was so familiar it had become instinct. Her beige designer carry-on glided effortlessly behind her polished heels. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, just enough to signal status but never flashy. The flight from Dallas to Washington, D.C. was always the same. First class, quiet, polished, and above all, selective. For Patricia, flying was a ritual, one she had mastered. From the moment she stepped into the lounge, to the glass of champagne before takeoff, to the subtle glances exchanged between those who belonged, the unspoken rules of privilege. Everything shifted. In just a few seconds she reached her seat and stopped. There, seated next to it, was a black man, a perfectly fitted navy suit, crisp white shirt, laptop open. His eyes focused on the screen as if the rest of the cabin didn't exist. He didn't look at her. He didn't move. He wasn't flustered. She hesitated for only half a second, but in her mind, thoughts flashed like lightning. What is he doing here? How is he sitting in first class? Whose seat is this? Was there some mistake? She said nothing. She dropped her handbag onto the seat with a firm thud. Not loud, but loud enough to make a point. She sat down but didn't relax. Her body remained tense, as if waiting for a reaction. Nothing. Daniel didn't turn, didn't flinch. Only the steady tapping of keys, the glow of the laptop reflecting off his sharp features, his brown skin warm under the soft cabin lights. He didn't need to assert he belonged there. The quiet confidence did it for him. That made Patricia even more unsettled. She shifted in her seat, adjusting her posture in a way that was clearly suggestive, then inhaled sharply, as if the air itself had changed. A slight movement, maybe unintentional, let her handbag lightly graze the armrest on Daniel's side. But he still didn't look up. Still no reaction. And that, more than anything, made her feel insulted. She leaned slightly closer, her eyes narrowing just a bit. Her voice was gentle and polite, wrapped in a thin layer of suspicion and authority. "Excuse me, are you sure you're in the right seat?" This time, Daniel paused his typing, but he didn't look up. He didn't need to. Yes. Just one word. Nothing more, nothing less. No explanation, no follow-up question, no polite smile like she was used to from people who knew how to behave. And that was exactly what unsettled her. Just one word, no apology, no deference. Patricia swallowed her irritation and turned her head, eyes scanning the cabin, as if searching for a witness to this improper behavior. Then she spotted Emily Jacobs, a young flight attendant assisting a row up ahead. She raised her hand. Daniel sighed softly, very softly, but just enough that someone perceptive would notice he had seen this coming. Emily approached with a professional smile. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" Patricia gave a light chuckle, trying to keep the moment framed as a polite misunderstanding. "I think there might be a little mix-up. This gentleman may be in the wrong seat." Emily glanced at Daniel. This time he stopped typing and looked up. No expression, no surprise, no anger. But in his eyes there was something different, a calm depth like still water hiding a storm beneath. Emily pulled up the passenger list on her tablet, scanned the screen quickly, then looked back up. "Actually, Mr. Stokes is in the correct seat. Your ticket is for seat 2A. He is sitting in 2B. Emily said, her voice still gentle and polite. Patricia blinked. Her fingers tightened around the armrest as if clinging to the last piece of authority she had. "That's strange," she said with a light laugh, trying to sound innocently surprised. "Are you sure? I could have sworn." Emily kept her professional smile, but her eyes were beginning to reflect a clearer understanding of the situation. "I am sure, ma'am. Everything is exactly as it should be." There was a quick flicker in Patricia's eyes. The calm expression she tried to hold began to slip. The lines near the corners of her eyes tightened and her lips drew into a firm, narrow line. But as if on cue, she composed herself again, forcing a cold, distant smile. "Oh, well, just a little mix-up," she said, exhaling as if brushing it off. Then she turned to face the window, eyes fixed on the view outside. But the truth was clear. She was not finished. Not even close. Meanwhile, Daniel returned to his work. His hands moved across the keyboard as though nothing had ever interrupted him. Emily hesitated for a second. She could feel the tension hanging in the air. But with nothing clear to address, she nodded slightly toward Daniel and continued down the aisle. Patricia stayed in her seat, seething. Her fingers tapped against her knee. Her breathing grew shallow. Her eyes flicked from the crew to Daniel and back again. She was waiting for something. A reaction, an apology, any sign that he would acknowledge her presence or give her some validation. But there was nothing. Daniel remained still, calm. He showed no anger, offered no appeasement, and did not follow any of her silent expectations. And that silence made her even more furious. She was not someone who gave up easily, and definitely not someone who accepted being ignored. Patricia straightened her back, crossed her arms, and began thinking carefully. She had spent a lifetime staying in control, and the idea that someone she believed did not belong could sit there without flinching was something she could not accept. This was not over. She pressed the call button. A soft chime rang through the cabin, and within seconds Emily returned. Her smile remained the same, professional and pleasant. "Is there something I can help you with, ma'am?" Patricia leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice as if she were sharing something private. "I'd like to change seats." Emily blinked gently. "Oh, are you feeling uncomfortable? Is there an issue with the seat?" Patricia paused for a second. She couldn't say what she really meant. She couldn't say, "I don't want to sit next to that black man." Instead, she tilted her head slightly toward Daniel, her voice dropping even lower, each word carefully chosen. I don't feel comfortable sitting here." Emily hesitated. The smile on her face wavered for just a moment. I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am," she said. Her voice was still gentle, but the friendliness in it had cooled. "If there is a technical issue with the seat, I'd be happy to—" "It's not the seat," Patricia interrupted, her tone edged with frustration and a hint of urgency. She took a sharp breath, as if trying to calm herself from a discomfort that hadn't been caused. "I just want to sit somewhere else." Emily glanced briefly at Daniel. He had stopped typing at some point, his fingers frozen above the keyboard. He said nothing, showed no expression. Only the faint tightening of his jaw suggested he was listening and already predicting where this was going. "Let me check if there are any available seats," Emily replied, gently tapping her tablet. "Please give me a moment." Patricia leaned back in her seat, her lips pressed together tightly. Still, Daniel said nothing. No challenge, no asking why she felt uncomfortable, no defense of his presence, no compromise, and that silence only made her more upset. Just a few rows away, a man in a blazer tilted his head slightly, pretending to check his phone but clearly watching. Across the aisle, a woman nudged her husband and whispered something in his ear. People were starting to notice. Emily moved quickly over the screen. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said. "First class is fully booked today. There are no seats available. Patricia felt her stomach tighten. The sensation of losing control made it hard to breathe. Would you like me to check the economy cabin? Emily offered. There may be a seat available there. That sentence hit like a slam. Economy? For her. Patricia froze. She couldn't respond right away. Her throat closed up. No, Her voice cracked. Then she swallowed. No, that won't work. Emily kept her polite smile, but the patience in her eyes was fading. In that case, I'd kindly ask you to remain in your assigned seat. Patricia forced a thin smile, as if still pretending she had control. I suppose I have no choice. Emily nodded and quietly stepped away. But Patricia could no longer hear anything. Her ears were ringing, her face was flushed with heat. Meanwhile, Daniel, exactly the same, had returned to his laptop. No words, no glance. It was as if she didn't exist. And that, more than anything else, enraged her. Her breathing grew sharp and fast, and then, once again, she pressed the call button. Emily returned, this time walking more slowly. Her eyes were cautious, her voice no longer as soft as before. Ma'am? Patricia sat upright, eyes locked forward. I need to speak with someone in higher authority. Emily's expression did not change, but her patience was clearly wearing thin. I am the lead flight attendant on this flight. Is there something I can clarify for you? Patricia clenched both hands. Her voice grew sharp and cold. I want to speak to the lead crew supervisor or the captain. A ripple of murmurs spread quickly through the cabin. Someone let out a quiet laugh. A few eyes glanced in their direction. Emily stood tall, but the smile had disappeared from her face. The captain is currently in the process of preparing for takeoff and cannot leave the cockpit. However, I am available to assist if you need anything. Patricia pressed her lips together. Her lower jaw gave a small tremble. She looked over at Daniel, who still had not reacted. No discomfort, no fear, no visible sign that he felt threatened. As if this kind of confrontation was something he experienced many times before. Then Patricia lowered her voice and said the words that carried tremendous weight in the confined space of a commercial airplane just before departure. I do not feel safe. Everything changed. Emily straightened her posture, her expression now firm and alert. Daniel stopped typing. His hands rested still above the keyboard. A middle-aged man across the aisle wearing a Bluetooth headset shook his head and sighed. Here we go again. Emily took a deep breath. Her voice was no longer a suggestion but a formal request. Man, could you please clarify what you just said? Patricia placed her hands on her lap, sitting up straight. Her voice was calm and steady, but she tilted her head slightly. Her words came slowly and hesitantly, but there was nothing accidental in their delivery. I just do not feel comfortable. She paused briefly, leaving an intentional silence that invited assumptions. I am not trying to cause trouble, but I believe it would be better if someone else were seated here. No direct accusation was made, but the implication was clear. Daniel closed his laptop. He did it slowly, carefully, without a single sound. This time, he looked her straight in the eyes. His gaze was not threatening, not angry. It was the kind of direct presence that forced a person to ask themselves whether they were doing the right thing. For the first time, Patricia felt her heart skip a beat, a brief moment where her sense of control wavered. But she pushed the feeling down. She was not the kind of person who backed off easily. Her voice grew louder, clearer. I do not feel safe. That sentence did not need to be loud. It did not need to be dramatic. It only needed to be spoken, and it was enough to completely shift the atmosphere inside the cabin. Emily remained beside her. The smile was gone. Her whole body tensed. and her gaze moved from Patricia to Daniel. Daniel had closed his laptop fully now, his hands rested on top of it. His expression was no longer silent detachment, it had become active observation. Patricia did not blink. She held his gaze, shoulders squared. She was not retreating. Not yet. Emily took a deep breath, trying to keep her voice professional. "Ma'am, did you just say you feel threatened?" Patricia gave a small shrug, wearing a carefully crafted look of innocence. "I did not say that. I just said I feel uncomfortable, that is all." Across the aisle, the man with the Bluetooth headset sighed again, this time more audibly. "Same old routine." A young woman in the row behind lifted her phone. She pretended to send a message, but was quietly recording. A few passengers began whispering, eyes turned toward Patricia. And she knew. She could feel the shift in attention, but still she did not back down. "This is a simple request," she said, trying to keep her tone light, as if she were asking for something entirely reasonable. "If I do not feel comfortable, I have the right to request a different seat, do I not?" Emily tightened her jaw. Her voice remained calm but had a sharper edge now. "Ma'am, I already checked. There are no available seats in first class." Patricia curled her lip into a small smile. "Well, then, what about economy?" Emily hesitated for a moment. "There are 2 open seats there." Patricia sat up straighter, the thin smile returning to her lips. "Perfect. He can go there." A wave of whispers spread through the cabin. Heads turned, some shook slightly, a few eyes widened. Daniel stopped tapping his laptop. His hands rested still, his gaze never left her. No reaction, no argument, no movement. Emily blinked, as if replaying Patricia's words in her mind, to be sure she had heard them correctly. Her voice came lower now, clearer, with no room left for negotiation. "Ma'am, please confirm. Are you asking me to move this passenger to economy class simply because you do not want to sit next to him?" Patricia gave a slight nod, sitting up straight as if she had just won something. "Yes." Emily inhaled deeply. Her voice was firm and precise. "That is not going to happen." Patricia lifted her chin. Her voice cracked slightly. "What did you just say?" Emily crossed her arms in front of her. Her gaze did not waver. "Mr. Stokes has a first-class ticket just like you. He is sitting in his assigned seat. I cannot and will not ask him to move." A sharp break in the air. Patricia's face turned red. Her control was gone. The pretense was gone. All around the cabin, passengers were watching. Some whispered. Others had their phones out recording. Her stomach tightened. Her face burned. The situation had spiraled beyond her grasp. "This is ridiculous," she hissed through clenched teeth. "I am simply making a request that anyone should have the right to make if they feel uncomfortable." Emily stood her ground. "You are asking me to remove a first-class passenger from his paid seat and move him to a lower cabin without any valid reason. That is not a reasonable request, ma'am." "Their discrimination," Patricia blurted out, silence, sharp as a blade. A soft whistle came from the back row. No one laughed, but no one pretended not to hear. Daniel did not move, he did not respond, he did not say a word. He just looked at her, waiting. And it was that silence that made Patricia feel more suffocated than anything else. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. The air felt thick. Everything was going wrong, and no one was coming to pull her out of it. Emily took a deep breath. Her shoulders rose, her posture clear and commanding. "Ma'am, the aircraft is preparing to taxi. If you refuse to remain seated and follow the crew's instructions, I will have to ask you to leave the plane." Patricia felt her stomach drop, like it had fallen into a void. What? Emily's tone remained professional, but there was no room left for objection. "You have two options: remain in your seat or exit the aircraft. But let me be clear, Mr. Stokes is not going anywhere." A few passengers clapped quietly. Not loud, but enough for her to understand she stood alone. Patricia choked on her breath. She could not speak. The world around her seemed to shrink. She opened her mouth, ready to protest. But before she could speak, Daniel lifted his hand and reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. Slowly, calmly, without drama, without threat. He pulled out a leather wallet, flipped it open, and under the soft cabin lights, the gold shine of an FBI badge caught the air like a blade slicing through a curtain of bias. The entire cabin froze. A few people let out small, stunned laughs. The girl recording zoomed in quickly on the badge. Daniel remained calm. His voice was steady and smooth, but carried undeniable authority. "Ma'am," he said, tilting his head slightly, "would you like to file a formal complaint? I can take your statement right now." Patricia could not move. She could not speak. She could not argue. There was no role left to cling to. Daniel did not move. He did not blink. He simply sat there, waiting for her to speak. For the first time in her life, Patricia felt truly trapped. And worse than the humiliation was the realization that real consequences were now staring her in the face. The cabin fell into a heavy silence, the kind of silence that comes from witnesses. The FBI badge still caught the light from the overhead panels. It was not something one could pretend not to see. It was a truth that could not be undone. From the nearby rows, the stares directed at her were no longer curious. They were judgmental. The young woman recording had not moved her hand from the screen. Everyone understood. This would not end here. Patricia tried to swallow. Her mouth was dry. She stammered, I... Daniel's face did not change. He tilted his head a little more. His voice remained gentle, but carried the precision of a blade. "You said you felt uncomfortable. On a flight under federal jurisdiction, that is a serious statement. If you believe I behaved inappropriately..." "I am prepared to document your statement," Daniel said. His tone was not loud, not aggressive, but so clear it seemed to carve through the air. Patricia felt her body sink. A cold sensation crept down the back of her neck and along her spine. Moments ago, she was in control. She was guiding the conversation. She was the one expecting protection, expecting to be defended. But now she was the one being questioned. 2 rows ahead, a man chuckled quietly and shook his head. "Unbelievable," he muttered. The girl holding the phone was now zoomed in on Patricia's face, capturing every flicker of shame, every tiny movement in a face that was beginning to collapse. Emily remained at her side, arms folded. Her expression was calm, but her eyes said everything. Not anger, not contempt, just quiet expectation. Patricia to decide how far she really wanted to go. Patricia could not admit she had lied. She could not say she just wanted a man removed because of her own bias. But if she pushed any further, if she took one more step, she would be accusing a federal agent of posing a threat on a plane, and the consequences of that were truly serious. Her hands trembled. Daniel's eyes never left her. No smile, no anger, no humiliation, just waiting. At last, after a silence that felt like an eternity, Patricia gave a slight shake of her head. It was so small that almost no one saw it, but Daniel saw, and he nodded once, as if he had expected it all along. He folded the badge, slid it back into his jacket pocket, and reopened his laptop, as if nothing had happened. To him it was over, but for Patricia, this was only the beginning. A few whispers spread, A few quiet claps followed. The man with the Bluetooth headset returned to his newspaper. The young woman was already typing. Not a message, a post. This story was not staying inside the cabin. Patricia felt her heartbeat race. She wanted to shrink, to disappear, to go back in time, but there is no undoing a moment like this. She was not just embarrassed, she was exposed, laid bare in front of a small community, and every single person had seen it. She searched the cabin for a sympathetic look, a single ally. But there was none. Not even Emily, who had been patient through it all, had warmth left in her expression. Patricia wanted to speak, to argue, to save face, but deep down she knew it was too late, and the plane had not even taken off yet. Patricia sat up straight. Her hands gripped the armrests tightly. Her eyes stared forward, locked on nothing, as if by refusing to look around she could make everything disappear. It was no longer discomfort, it was shame. Meanwhile, Daniel had returned to his work. His fingers tapped steadily on the keyboard. In his world, she no longer existed, but the world around her did not forget. The man with the Bluetooth headset looked over and gave a small smirk, not amused, not cruel, just understanding. And Patricia knew. She no longer had control over anything. The young woman had stopped typing, but her phone remained tilted, the camera still aimed at Patricia, as if waiting for one final reaction. Even the flight attendants, trained to remain neutral, no longer held a perfect mask of indifference. They said nothing, but their eyes were different now, no longer serving, watching. Emily, the lead flight attendant, stood nearby, quiet but unmistakably present. And Patricia felt it all for every glance, every pause in conversation, every silent judgment. She had miscalculated. This was no longer a misunderstanding that could be brushed off with a polite laugh or a casual line like, "Oh, it was just a small inconvenience." She had tried to have a federal agent removed from his seat on an airplane and had been caught on camera. That reality pressed down on her chest like a boulder. Her mouth was dry. Her eyes flicked toward Emily, who was now stepping closer. "Ma'am," Emily said, her voice low and respectful, but no longer soft, "I need confirmation that you are calm enough to continue this flight without further disruption." Patricia straightened up. A few passengers glanced back, pretending not to listen, but every ear caught the moment. She wanted to argue, to scream, "Why am I the one being treated like the problem? I only said I was uncomfortable," but that badge had changed everything. She had no power, no support, no voice. She forced a smile, a shape she hoped looked calm, but was painfully strained. I'm fine." Emily stared at her for a moment longer, then gave a slow nod. "I will take your word for it." Emily turned away, leaving Patricia alone in a battle that had ended, but whose echoes were only just beginning. Patricia exhaled, her breath shaky, her hands clutched the armrests tightly. It was over. At least she thought so. A small chime cut through the silence. She looked up just in time to see the young woman in front smirk and tap her screen twice. Patricia recognized that look. She had seen it on her nieces' faces whenever they had just posted something online, something that would spread fast. Her heart began to pound. She leaned slightly to the side, glancing at the girl's screen. The video had been uploaded. The title read, "Racist Woman Tries to Get Black Man Removed from First Class Until She Finds Out He's FBI." No audio was needed, no extra explanation, that was enough. She felt her chest tighten. Air seemed to vanish from her lungs. The world around her shrank, curling inward. The plane had not even taken off, and she had already lost. And if the video was online, there was no way to stop it now. She turned her head forward again, trying to breathe slowly, trying to push away the spiral of consequences. Maybe no one would notice. Maybe the video would not spread far. Maybe. The phone in her purse vibrated. Once, twice, 3 times, Patricia froze. She did not want to look. She did not dare to guess. But her hand moved on its own, reaching into her purse and finding her phone by instinct. Her fingers wrapped around it, pulled it out, and the screen lit up. She brought the phone into view, and it felt like the world tilted. Messages, dozens. From acquaintances, from family, from people she had not heard from in years, all circling around one single question. Patricia, is that you? I just saw a video. Please tell me it's not real. Oh my God, what did you do? Her heartbeat slammed against her ribs, desperate to break free. Her hands shook as she opened her browser and tapped on Twitter display. Then a second, a name Patricia Langford was trending. The video had been uploaded less than 5 minutes ago, and already it had more than 20,000 views. And the comments, falling like a thunderstorm. Karma hits quick. Did she really think she could get away with that? Get ready for the whole internet to tear her apart? Patricia could not breathe. Everything was not just collapsing, it was burning, and for the first time she understood. There would be no going back. But what would happen after the plane landed would be even worse than she imagined. Her grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles turned white. All sound in the cabin faded, swallowed by the pounding of her own heart. She refreshed the video. Each time she tapped, the number grew doubled. 30,000, 42,000, 61,000, no pause. No sign of slowing down. She scrolled down. More comments flooded in. Classic white privilege behavior, LOL. Thought she'd be protected, turns out it was the FBI. Reveal her identity, we need to know who she is. Her chest tightened. Her eyes scanned the cabin, searching for a sympathetic glance, anything to hold on to. No one looked at her anymore. They had seen enough. She shifted slightly in her seat, her whole body stiff, frozen. Daniel was still beside her. His fingers tapped gently on the keyboard. He said nothing, reacted to nothing, seemed not to care at all. And that calm hurt more than any insult ever could. She flinched. Another message. This time her sister. The name appeared on the screen. She hesitated, then declined the call with a trembling finger. She was not ready for that conversation. She was not ready for any of this. The plane had not even taken off, but her life was already in free fall. She exhaled hard, forcing herself to stay composed. She needed a plan, a way to manage this. Maybe an apology? No, that would only fuel the fire. Pretend she had not seen the video? Worse. Her mind spun, thoughts collided, twisted, shattered, and then... Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing for taxi. The pilot's voice came over the speakers, calm, even serene. But Patricia's world, it collapsed in silence. We are now landing in Washington, D.C., where the local time is 5:43 p.m. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened. The captain's voice came over the speaker, gentle, but to Patricia it sounded like a death sentence. She had forgotten. In the chaos of the cabin, in the pounding of her heart and the steady tapping of Daniel's keyboard, she had forgotten there was still an entire world waiting outside. She pulled out her phone, refreshed the video one last time. 97,000 views. Her name was still trending. She tried to shove the phone back into her bag, but her hands were shaking so badly that she needed both to do it. In her mind, she repeated one thing over and over. I can manage this. I have handled more complicated PR crises before. Maybe it will not be as bad as it seems. She still clung to that hope in the middle of the storm until she turned on the TV. As the plane door opened, Patricia almost ran out, like fleeing a burning room. She ignored the glances from the aisle, the quiet laughter, the whispered words no one said aloud. She just needed to get out. But as she rounded the corner into the baggage claim area at Reagan Airport, her heart seized. Up ahead stood a small cluster of reporters. Not a huge crowd, not yet. A woman in a navy blazer was reading from her phone, microphone in hand, camera aimed directly at her face. A recent viral video shows an identified woman attempting to have an FBI agent removed from first class because she claimed she felt uncomfortable. The clip has reached over 1 million views in just a few hours. Patricia stopped breathing. 1 single million? Impossible. She turned her face away, praying no one would notice. But then an eye caught hers. The reporter lit up. Wait, that's her. Patricia spun around. Panic clamped her chest like a vice. She could not be seen like this, not now, not like this. The sharp clack of her heels echoed off the tile as she rushed toward the exit. She weaved through the crowd. Sweat trickled down her back, her breathing rapid, hands ice cold. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. But messages, missed calls, alerts, dozens. She shoved past a group of tourists, nearly lost her footing, and finally burst out onto the curb. Ms. Langford, do you have any response to the video? She turned around, her face tight with dread. They knew her name. The taxi pulled up. Without waiting for the car to stop fully, she nearly threw herself into the back seat. Drive! Now! The driver raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He pressed the gas pedal. Patricia buried her face in her hands. Her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would tear through her chest. 1 million views. She had spent her entire life building a reputation, a respected name, a spotless image, and in one afternoon it had all turned to ash. Her phone again, this time an unknown number. She stared at the screen. Her heartbeat thundered so loud she thought her throat might vibrate. Just before the call went to voicemail, she swiped to answer. Hello? Her voice was barely a whisper. A brief silence, then a firm male voice. Ms. Langford, this is James Rollins. I am the chairman of the Marston Foundation. I assume you are aware of the situation. Her mouth was dry. She had been a board member of the Marston Foundation for years, a well-known charity with a progressive, inclusive, ethical image. And now she knew exactly what this call meant. James, we need your resignation. It was not a request. It was an order. Patricia stared blankly out the window. Her heart pounded like it wanted to escape her body. But this is being misunderstood. I was taken out of context. The board does not agree. His tone remained even. We will issue a public statement tomorrow morning. We expect your resignation before then. He hung up. No reassurance, no we will talk later, no second chance. Just the end, Patricia slowly lowered her phone, her career over her reputation destroyed. And the part that hurt the most? No one cared about her explanation. They had seen the video, and that was enough. She let out a shaky breath. For the first time, she stopped pretending she could manage the panic. She stopped believing she could control the damage. She stopped trying to handle a crisis. Because this was not a crisis, this was a truth she had created, and now she had to live with it.